Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of Smokey Dave Presents. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about making smoked peach salsa. That's right, peach. A sweet, tangy, savory salsa where we're going to be smoking the peaches themselves along with some of the bell peppers. And then we're going to be making that into a shelf stable salsa, which means we're going to be using the pressure canner today. Now, you may recall that we made tomatilla salsa in the past on another episode, but that was only refrigerator stable, where we didn't really pressure can it, so you couldn't keep that at room temperature. It will still keep in the refrigerator for a few months. Still, this will keep for years. So for the preppers out there that are watching the world blow up in the current events, make sure you pack in a lot of salsa so you have something to dip your chips in while you're watching all of this happen out there from your bunker. On a more serious note, though, seriously, we're gonna make some delicious salsa, and I hope you enjoy. Yeah, so what we have here is we've got tomatoes, got some garlic, a lime, some red and green jalapenos. These are actually Fresnos, but that's all right. Cilantro, some bell peppers, onion, and some peach halves. You could use fresh peaches, but you do have to skin them if you do. This is just easier. So these peaches were canned in light syrup. That's basically sugar and water. If I had canned these myself, or my mom had canned them, I would definitely save that juice and just drink it, or use it in an alcoholic beverage. Don't mind my horrible camera work in this spot, but we're basically just draining these peaches, and then we're going to place them back into the jar. And then we're going to stick them in the refrigerator to cool down while we go out and get the smoker going. The colder these are, the better during the smoking process. And of course, it's a cold day outside, and I'm going to have the air conditioner on in the cold smoker anyways to keep things nice and cool. We only have to smoke these for about 30 to 45 minutes. Well, here I am out by the cold smoker. And as you can see, I'm talking to myself because I forgot to turn the microphone on the camera. But that's okay. I'll talk us through here. You see, I'm putting the split bell peppers on first, and then I will grab the jar of peaches. We'll get those on. They are a bit slippery. And for anyone who might be worried about the whole botulism thing with cold smoking, we're only going to be doing this for about 30 minutes. We're doing it on the lowest shelf, and we're going to be opening the door a couple of times, so we're not going to have that oxygen-free environment. These will get smoked rather quickly because, of course, peaches are very soft, so they'll pick up the smoke real nice, and not too much. So I'll get these on the rack here, and we'll get the smoking started. And then we'll get to making our smoked salsa. Okay, so I'm about to dice up all our ingredients, starting with our tomatoes. We'll dice those into small little bits here, and once we get all of the tomatoes done, we'll drain them because they do tend to make a lot of excess juice, and we don't want our salsa to be too watery. So we'll get those all drained, and then once the tomatoes are done, we'll move on to the peppers. And with the peppers, we want to get rid of all of the seeds. Those tend to be very hot and not very tasty. They don't have a good mouthfeel either, so we want to clean those all out. And we'll dice them up in about the same size that we just did to the tomatoes. We want a nice chunky Pico de Gallo, which is what we're going to make first before we do the pressure canning. And I did fail to mention that at the beginning, that we're going to be making both fresh Pico de Gallo, as well as salsa. Here we are with our aromatics, starting with our onions. We're going to dice them up in the same way. And then once we're done with those, we will get our garlic. Now the garlic we're going to put through a press. We want to have that a little finer to mix in a little better with the ingredients. We don't want to have a big chunk of garlic. That might not taste so great to have that in a big chunk like that. So we'll just use the press with this. And I get all of our ingredients all ready for those peaches, which are just about ready to come out of the smoker. The peaches are done now, and I'm going to pull them out of the smoker. They've been in there, about 35, 40 minutes. So we'll get those, and we'll get the peppers together. We'll bring them inside, and we'll begin dicing them up just like we did with all the other ingredients. So sit back. I shall get these diced up and ready to go. Something to think about when you're making a peach salsa like this is one of the ingredients we're going to be adding, in fact it'll be our final ingredient, will be the cilantro. Now cilantro brings a bright, citrusy-like flavor to things, especially to salsas. But unfortunately, there is a small group of people that have a genetic disposition that when they taste cilantro, they taste dish soap. I have actually met a few people that have this experience, and I have found a solution for this. So stay tuned. But here I'm getting the cilantro. I'm dicing it up nice and fine. Try to keep the stems out, but we'll get the leaves and we'll chop them up fairly fine, and then we'll mix that in. And as soon as I get this chopped up, before I mix it into all of our other ingredients, I'm going to separate a little bit out into another bowl. And in this one, I'm going to show you what to do if you happen to have a family member or you yourself have this issue with cilantro. It's an ingredient that I'm not sure too many people have heard of, or they may have heard of it and never thought of it as a spice or as something they can use in the kitchen. So here, let me get the regular salsa, or actually more accurately Pico de Gallo at this point. That is Salsa Fresca, or fresh. As promised, I have a little something that you can use in the place of cilantro. Ground sumac. Now, you may have heard of the sumac tree. Now, when I first heard about this tree, I was a little kid. My dad came home and he was covered with a rash because he got into the wrong kind of sumac. There's two kinds. There's one that has the big, bright, red, clumpy looking flower things, and that's where this comes from because it's literally those flowers ground up. This is a delicious, citrusy, spicy spice that pretty much does what cilantro does for you. So, for those who can't stomach the cilantro, put a little bit of this in here. That's a good way to replace your cilantro. The stuff's delicious. I always thought it was poison. It's not. There's only one kind of sumac that's poison. That's the kind that's out in the, well, actually both kind of like wet environments. But the kind that's poison has these kind of a brownish tan berries, and they hang downward. They don't look anything like these. So no worries there. Alrighty. Roll our lime out here a bit. And a good cut and a half. And we'll squeeze a little lime juice in there. Squeeze a little more in here because it's bigger. Alright folks, so there it is. Our Pico de Gallo, or Salsa Fresca. Fresh salsa. But now the big question. What do we do if we made more than we could possibly eat? Well, that's the next thing we're going to look at. So this is the next day, and I have a little bit of Pico de Gallo left. I also had quite a bit of ingredients left too, so I chopped those up in the same way as before. And I'm going to dump all of this into a stock pot, and I'm going to bring this up to a low boil. And once all the ingredients are mixed together and brought up to a low boil, I will get all of my canning equipment out, and you'll see that here in a minute. And we'll start filling the jars. Now I'm going to fill these jars with about 3/4 of an inch of headroom, right about where this the screw part on the glass starts. We want to always give it a little bit of headroom there, and then tap it down and make sure that it's clear of the top. And then when we fill the jar, we're going to take a rag and dip it in a little bit of white vinegar, which I have right there, and wipe the top to make sure there's no contaminants or anything around the lid. And then I have a little magnetic deal that I use to pick up the lid, which is in that white cup there, is in boiling water. I made that out of a fondue fork and a piece of magnet I had because I can't find my actual lid picker-upper. We seat that up and we put a ring on it, only finger tight. You don't want to crank it down. It's got to allow the gases to escape during the pressure cooking process. Well, I've got the pressure cooker up to temperature now. There's about 2 inches of water there and it's boiling. And we'll go ahead and use the jar picker upper to pick up our very hot jars and put them in the boiling water. Now, I don't quite have enough jars to fill the entire bottom of the pressure cooker, so I will also put some extra jars that you see here that are just filled with water, just to keep them from bouncing around from each other. I'm going to throw the separator on top too. That'll also help. And then I'm going to place the top on, but I'm going to place the top on without the jiggler. That's the little thing that bounces around when you're up to pressure. We do this because we want to get all the oxygen and air out of the pressure cooker and have it filled with the hot steam. So we'll let that sit for about 5 to 10 minutes until we have a steady stream of steam coming out of the nozzle. Then I'll place the jiggler on top, and the pressure will then begin to build. It'll go up to 15 pounds on this one. I only have a 15-pound jiggler, even though the recipe called for a 10-pound. That just means that the temperature is going to go up a little bit higher, but that's not going to hurt anything. We're only going to be pressure cooking the salsa for about 5 minutes, especially for jars this small. And so after 5 minutes, we'll simply turn off the heat, and I will eventually move it off of the hot burner into a cooler one, and let the pressure go back down until the safety indicator has gone down as well, and the pressure gauge shows 0. And now it's safe to take the top off. It's still very hot, so I let it cool for another hour, and then I took the jars out and set them on the stove here, and I just let them sit there for overnight. Now remember, always take the rings off of any shelf-stable canned product. You don't want the rings on because they can actually cause the seal to break, and of course you want to be able to see into the jar and see if there is any problems. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Smokey Dave Presents. I know it went a little bit longer than most of my videos, but I wanted to get across the whole idea of pressure canning and preserving of foods. Obviously, when you make something like Pico de Gallo in a large quantity, as I did, if you don't eat it up within a day or two, it isn't very good, and it'll go bad very quickly. But through the process of pressure canning, I'll be able to keep that salsa around for years if I want. It won't last that long, but technically it could. Now, if you want to learn a little bit more about pressure canning, I have a great resource. This book right here, it's available on Amazon. Links in the description. It's probably one of the best I've seen. Now, I grew up with a mother who canned all the time, so I kind of knew a lot of this stuff, but there were a lot of things in this book that I didn't know, especially about canning meats. She never did that, and so that's something that's new to me and something I'm going to explore a little bit deeper. But I just wanted to say thank you for sticking with me this long. And if you like what you saw today, would you smash that like button and maybe think about subscribing? There'll be a lot more content like this, and I hope to improve and bring you new things and new recipes and new ideas and building new things. Got all kinds of ideas coming up, so stay tuned. And one other thing, folks, don't forget, it's no joke. Everything's better with smoke.